Well, welcome to the second of 3 videos looking at Agile project management. And what we're going to do during this particular video is look at the Iterative project management lifecycle model. So the Iterative project management lifecycle model is going to consist of a number of iterations, a number of phases. So you're going to start out, scope out the entire project, get approval for the project through your project overview statement, and then you're going to move into a series of iterations where you plan the iteration, launch it, monitor it, and then make a decision to close the iteration. When you close the iteration, you're either deciding to close the project, in which case you may abandon the project. You may close the project because you've reached your final solution. You may release an intermediate solution out to your customers, or you may not, and you may just cycle back and then plan your next iteration. This kind of feedback loop where you keep going back to this planning iteration allows you to build in learning through the entire process and to work together with the client to determine the full solution to the problem at hand. You're going to use this when most of the solution is clearly known, but there's part of it that is not clearly known. You have a strong suspicion that there are going to be a number of changes, that learning is going to take place as part of this project. And so you're just building a mechanism that you can work those into each of those iterations as you're going through the iterative project management lifecycle model. And then finally, if you've got concern about lack of client involvement, the client is going to have to be involved in making decisions at the end of each iteration. This gives you those regular kind of checkup points with the client, make sure things are moving in the right direction. But anything within Agile, unlike traditional, you've got to have heavy client involvement. So let's go through each of the phases. So during the scoping phase, got to be careful because the implementation of intermediate solutions can be problematic, and some of them can be delivered and some of them cannot. Some of them is just fixing the engineering or the piping behind the scenes that's going to be necessary. The other piece is that because you don't have a clearly known solution, the final solution cannot be defined. What you can do is define components of it that you do know, and in the case of iterative, it should be most of it. But there are other pieces you're just going to have to learn as you're working through the project. Selling this to senior management can sometimes be challenging because their expectation is a more traditional approach. But again, 70% of all projects are actually agile, not traditional. That learning will take place. During the planning phase, the complete plan is built for what you do know, and then a partial plan for high priority functions and for those things that you don't know. You're not going to be able to fully plan that out. Once you get to the launch phase, remember it's during the launch phase that you're recruiting and filling in your entire team. You're going to use a different type of team than you might find on a traditional project management project team. So the size is very different. Typically, Agile teams are smaller than 15. Largest is maybe 25 or so. You're going to have very skilled workers. They're all co-located, very senior, and they're typically unsupervised. Okay, so a very different type of team. And as you're working through iterations, you have to be careful because the team may change out and you're going to have to bring someone up to speed on where they are in that particular iteration and where you are in the overall project. Monitoring control phase is similar, but again, there's some other things you probably want to look at. Scope bank size is going to be very important in terms of understanding what functionality still remains to be implemented and client decisions about whether to continue the project, release versions, or to abandon the project. When you and then you get to the close phase, which is really bifurcated. You've got a close associated with the iteration and a close associated with the overall project. Remember, with Agile, you want to be lean, as we talked about during the first video, which means the documentation and planning will be just in time. It will not necessarily be where you're doing everything up front because, again, learning is going to take place. When you start looking at the characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses of the iterative project management lifecycle model, we've talked about most of these. Solution is known, but you've still got some pieces you've got to fill in. Prototypes are often used so that you can say, this is what we're going to build during this iteration, and then away you go. You actually take the interface and flesh it out. It allows the client to review partial solutions, make suggestions, change scope, and have learning take place as part of the process. And it's very adaptive to a changing business situation. Now, it does have some weaknesses. The client must be more actively involved in a traditional project management project. Those teams need to be co-located, very skilled, independent to a certain extent, and you want to be moving at the speed of trust as you're trying to build these solutions. Sometimes it's difficult to implement intermediate solutions, and so again, some projects lend themselves to an iterative approach, some projects do not. And there is more risk in this type of a project because the final solution cannot be defined at the start of the project. Well, guess what? That brings us to the end of the second of 3 videos looking at Agile project management. During this particular video, we've looked at the iterative project management lifecycle model. And what we'll do during the next video is look at the adaptive project management lifecycle model. We'll keep on studying, keep on learning, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.